Good evening, everybody. How are we doing tonight? Welcome to Growers Live. I'm Josh Satin. We have Cliff Davis today from Pig and Leaf, and yeah, it's going to be awesome. I love talking to Cliff, and this is an opportunity that is really cool. I'm loving these shows. I'm so happy you guys are here tonight, and yeah, I'll let you guys know that the next show will be in 2 weeks, and that'll be October 13th. We will have JM Fortier on the show, and then we have some more guests coming up soon. I'm still trying to dial in a couple of dates and availabilities of people, but yeah. So, anyways, let's get Cliff on here, and yeah. Cliff, how's it going?
Good.
Good to have you on,
Doing
man.
great. Thank you.
Absolutely. Of course, YouTube's yelling at me again. So, yeah, let me take 1 second and switch this up. I'm sorry, Cliff.
No worries.
All right, Cliff, I think we're back on. So, cool. Well, why don't you start us off and talk a little bit about your farm and some of the things you have going on at Pig and Leaf, and just let people know, what you're growing, what you're doing, that kind of stuff, and then we can get into some more
Right.
specific stuff. Yeah, that'd be great.
Okay. So we're a 50-acre farm in Middle Tennessee, just south of Nashville. We bought a clear-cut piece of land about 12 or 13 years ago. And ever since then, we've been designing according to permaculture principles, ecological design principles. And right now we have about 1/3 of an acre in production of vegetables, about a half an acre in production of flowers. And that's kind of a mixed permaculture garden where you have swales and ponds and tree crops and silvopasture systems, not silvopasture, sorry, agroforestry systems. So in between those alleys are flower production. And then we have all the rest of it is under pig production. We do a woodland pigs as well. And it's ran by my wife and I. And then we have farm partners that we collaborate with, Jason and Olivia. And then we have one part-time employee that kind of shows up whenever we need them. And we've been market farming for about 4 years. We've been on and off, no-till, trialing all kinds of different ways of trying no-till. And we're still trialing a lot of that. And we do farmers markets. Right now, we do mostly farmers markets. We're trying to switch to our marketing and switching to drop-offs and more direct-to-consumer via drop-offs and also door-to-door delivery and shipping. We don't have all the logistics of that ready yet, but we're trying. And then we also do a little bit of restaurants, but our restaurant business, we were about 75% restaurants before COVID. And then Friday the 13th or something like that during COVID, that ended very abruptly.
Yeah.
And so we had to change our complete marketing program and start a new online market. And now we're looking at changing that again with deliveries and with shipping possibly as well. So it's just this constant kind of upping your game, trying to keep with what's going on, what's needed, what are people wanting. But other than that, my wife Jennifer focuses mostly on the flowers. Jason and Olivia focus mostly on the vegetables, and then I focus mostly on the pig operation. Um, I think that's about it. Our house is off grid. We live in a naturally built. Have over 20, I think, ponds and swales everywhere, and water catchment systems, tree crops, chestnuts, mulberries, persimmons, apples, pears, peaches, plums, all that stuff. But that's just, we don't sell that stuff. That's mostly for us.
Right.
It's kind of an edible landscape, so the neighbors even walk through, and things are being like when the peaches are ripe, they're walking through collecting buckets of peaches and buckets of plums and any berries that might be fruiting. So it's kind of a neighborhood edible landscape. And then we also live next to a very large community. Even though we live way out in the middle of nowhere, we live next to an old hippie community named The Farm. And that is also one of our biggest supporters. We sell the vegetables there. We deliver door to door there. And that's been very successful for us as well.
Wow, there's so much going on at your farm. How long have you been on that property for? Did you already mention that?
I think it's 13 years now.
Okay.
Yeah. It started out completely clear cut.
Oh wow.
So
okay.
we're kind of dealing with how do you slow down succession, but then also how do you use succession in its ongoing stages, and that's been very tricky.
Absolutely. And I know when we first met, actually the only time we got to hang out was out at Jesse's place last fall. And we had a lot of good conversations about permaculture and how that's. Maybe you can tell a little bit about your background with permaculture. I think I was fascinated to talk to you about that when we got together, but sort of the education side of it and the evolvement over the last couple decades for yourself as a farmer. Can you talk a little bit about that stuff?
Right. Yeah. So Jennifer and I got, I think when I was 28, I'm 48 now. We got together when I was around 28, and we started traveling to farms and living on farms, apprenticing, doing that whole, farm wolf apprentice, gypsy thing. And I got turned on to permaculture, and I instantly knew that that's what I wanted to do at that point in time was set up farming systems. But I was more interested in international development, and but that never really worked out very well for me because we had kids and that, we just had family. And so we stayed in the States, and we had a farm down in Florida for about a few years, 16 acres down there, but a hurricane kind of ended that abruptly. That was the first place that I taught permaculture at an introduction level. And then I moved to Tennessee and started teaching with Albert Bates and Greg Brown. Let's see, who else was it? Several other people. Then that's when we started something what was called Spiral Ridge Permaculture. That was when we moved on to this site. And I started teaching and developing the systems around using permaculture and regenerative ag and ecological design to restore a degraded landscape. That was kind of our focus, was the restoration aspect of using permaculture. And also, natural building and rainwater collection and all of that. I studied all of that and have a lot of experience in a lot of that too. And about 4 years ago, I started kind of draining. I taught probably for 10 years straight, and I just kind of started losing my love affair with teaching, but also with just permaculture in general. And I found that there was something else that was calling me, and it was what had been calling me for a long time, actually, which was market farming, and starting to make a living as a farmer, because our landscape had gotten to the point where we could actually start thinking about making a living as farmers. And so we slowly made the closing down Spiral Ridge and not teaching. This is our first year we're not teaching permaculture courses, and just focusing on farming. And it's been a really great transition for me. I don't know what happened as far as losing my love affair with teaching, but I just kind of wanted to be, I think, more solitude and just really trying to figure out these systems that we've purported to say that work so well, but nobody's figured out how to make them profit. Very few people have figured out how to make them profitable. And the diversity of the systems is what's the hardest part in figuring out. Within the farming community, everybody says just focus on one thing, and I've never been able to do that. And so we focused on a biodiversity, more diversity in our marketing systems, more diversity in our agricultural systems, but also trying to figure out what crops make the most money. And those have been, of course, the market garden system, salad. And I studied with Ray Tyler, and I specifically studied with Ray Tyler to learn how to grow lettuce, because I knew lettuce was a good production-based moneymaker. And then flowers we do because of Jennifer's love affair with flowers and my love affair with flowers too. I just love them so much. But really, the vegetables really help us pay for my pig addiction, which has been kind of ridiculous over the last 10 years. But so that's kind of the story in a nutshell, so to speak.
That's interesting. I know, like, as a former, I taught high school for 5 years, and like you were teaching for a lot longer, obviously, than that. But that transition over to market gardening, like, were you always like, did you have that inkling in the back of your head in the like 10 or 20 years you've been sort of diversifying and working in these more permanent systems? Like, were you thinking, like, I just want to grow greens now? Like, it seems like a pretty like strong transition because it's very different.
Yeah, not at all. It was literally an economical study. In farming, people forget that you have to figure out cash flow. And my love affair with pigs. There's no cash flow for another 8 months after you put pigs on the ground.
Right.
It's all cash out. If you got 40 hogs on the ground, you got 40,000 pounds of feed you got to feed them in the 7 months. That costs a lot of money. So it's cash out, cash out, cash out. But then it's just standing money on hoof. So then you got to sell it, and then you can get your money back. And it's a great exchange as far as making a living is concerned. However, it doesn't keep the bills paid every month. So we had to figure out a really strategic way of doing that. And to do that, we figured out that we needed to concentrate on, low days to maturity crops. And those were just obvious: radishes, lettuces, baby greens, microgreens, stuff like that. So hence the pig and leaf. And in so doing, we found that my wife absolutely loves flowers. But my love affair was always tree crops. My love affair still is tree crops. And J. Russell Smith wrote the book on tree crops, and it just so happened to have pigs also within the context. And that's still my love affair. I just have to figure out how to make things work. Most livestock farmers do chickens for their cash flow. But we just didn't have that kind of land. We don't have pasture. We have a big ridge, and it's rocky and real hard to move chicken tractors on. And I've tried it. My love affair with chickens kind of slowly went downhill over the last 10 years. But so we figured we needed to figure out how to make money and cash flow every week, and that was lettuce.
That makes sense. Yeah, so let's talk a little bit about lettuce. Like, I know you said you worked with Ray and sort of learned a lot of his systems. And he's like, I don't know anyone who grows better lettuce than him, especially in our part of the country. What are some things, that you tried that worked or didn't work, or like, how are your systems right now? Like, what does that look like?
Well, I keep trialing just like Ray does. I keep trialing different lettuce varieties, from wild garden seeds all the way to the Salanova, to thinking about even breeding my own lettuces. But I realized that was a ridiculous endeavor. But I think the biggest thing is just the scheduling of lettuces and all of the little intricacies which make growing lettuce possible all year round. That was the biggest one. And we're still tweaking that and figuring that out. I still haven't come to putting everything in landscape fabric. However, that might change soon. But I think all those little things about lettuce, the making sure that you have the root tone in the mix whenever you do your lettuce seedlings, making sure that the germination chamber is at 72 degrees, making sure that you have a good lettuce soil mix, making sure that you harden them off in the heat, making sure that you transplant them wet into wet. And those are little bitty things that don't seem like a lot, but they're everything. And then the maintenance of that lettuce is also really important too. It's, just maintaining a good head of lettuce without any of the bugs and predation and deer. There's another big one around us. So those are some of the biggest things that I took away from Ray was all the little things. And he's such a great instructor and teacher and friend that you can ask him. Well, I shouldn't probably tell you that, but you can ask him a lot of questions and he'll answer them. He really helps people out really well. And that was that was crucial in the success of our lettuce production.
Cool. I know Ray's an awesome guy. I've only had minimal interactions with him, but everything's been super positive, and everyone's like loved his course and all his knowledge. Anyone who's spending time with him just seems like a great person.
Yeah.
What's the idea with the landscape fabric? Why would you be starting to use that, you think, moving forwards?
Well, the humid South.
Yeah, I do know
and
that.
then, all of us no-till people, we like using all these like really good compost and really good nutrients. And guess what else loves that? Weeds. And so, and then you still have to tilth it or PDR the bed or something to get a good bed if you're going to direct seed or if you're going to even transplant. So trying to keep things tidy, that gets pretty hard. Even now, we've got garlic cress coming in, and we've got chickweed coming in, and it's like, man, this is just, we're always having to remember to cultivate. And my nemesis, I do not like putting down landscape fabric. I kind of think it's just so much work. But then when you do it and you realize that all the work's in the front end and it's not in the middle and the end, it does make a lot of sense. I think the biggest thing is you in the South, you got to remember we got 9 inches of rain in 24 hours 2 weeks ago. So what might be the context of, let's say, something like Singing Frogs, where they don't get 8 inches of rain in one day of deep litter compost, that just doesn't work here. Has not worked for me at all. And our compost seems to be, the more you put on, it's more hydrophobic and it dries out faster, and it doesn't have the clay and all the binders that mix with it very well. And so we're just trying to look at like adding carbon to the first few layers. And to do that, you're going to do a little bit of low till. And what you get out of that is typically some weeds. And you have to really be on cultivation every week to keep those weeds at bay. Now, that doesn't say, you have to remember though, a lot of our garden beds and our veggie production are brand new. So we don't have great soils. So the weeds just want to grow and grow and grow. So we're still building soil. We're still building microbiology. We're still building all of the foundations that we need in order to grow really healthy, productive lettuce. We're still doing the Logan Labs test. We're still adding the remineral packs in the fall and the spring, and then learning, more and more about bug predation. And I mean, if we have everything in the South, it's really hard to grow here. And the fact that someone like Ray can grow lettuce year round, like spot on every time, props to him.
Oh yeah, it's
It's not
incredible.
that easy. It's
Yeah,
not that easy.
I think the ideas about the deep compost system in general has been, I mean, we've been talking about it a lot. Like Jesse and I talk a lot about, and I had Charles Dowding on this show, and he's like, he just adds lots of compost. And then before the show, I'm like, do you understand what the weather's like here? He's like, no. And I told him with the temperature and our rain events, and he's like, wait, what? How hot is it? He like couldn't like, those systems don't work everywhere. And I think as we're trying to grow these difficult crops in the South, I mean, one thing I've heard about landscape fabric is, just keeping it cleaner, keeping the greens cleaner, because when it rains, you don't get as much splash up on the greens too. So that's another benefit.
Oh,
But I don't
that's
like
the
covering.
word.
It is, yeah. I mean, I don't like covering the ground, but then again, like we'll get 3 inches in a 1 hour event or 1.5 hours, and you lose so much soil. Like even if it's planted, like there's no way around it.
Yeah,
So
we live on hills. It's not like flat land.
Yeah,
I live on a ridge. So, most of your compost, when you add 2-3 inches, it ends up down at the bottom of the hill. And I'm going, well, that's not going to work.
right. Right.
So I'm looking at what do people with heavy rainfall do, and some of the better farmers just live a couple hours just literally from me. So just pay attention to what they're doing and how they're adjusting,
And more tunnels. Is that in your future?
Way more tunnels, all tunnels. As far as I'm concerned, put it all in tunnels.
I say the same thing.
That's the way to go. You get 2 to 3 times more production. You get your beet greens look beautiful. You don't have to cut the beets off at the bottom and get rid of the greens. You can sell the whole plant. Everything's different. It's just a game changer.
I tell people that all the time. Yeah.
Irrigation,
Yep. Yeah. People
game
go.
changer.
People go, wait, you want a tunnel in the summer? I'm like, that's exactly what I want. The tunnel is in the summer when you get those heavy rains. I mean, that's the biggest enemy for me. So
that's right.
Let's cover
When
the
you
whole
get the diffused
farm.
light, from actual plastic.
Right.
You can tell a complete difference under there. And then you put 30% shade cloth is what we use, and it's incredible. We open the end walls up. We don't keep them closed during the summer, and it's a total game changer. As soon as we bought one of those farmer friend cat tunnels, I said, well, everything's got to be under these things. You put them up in 4 hours. At the same time, we were putting up an NRCS hoop house. That was the most frustrating thing I've ever built in my life, and I've built a lot of stuff. And it's like 5 million parts and little screws and bolts and horrible instructions. And, you get the cat tunnel and you're like, wow, this is like color coded. Holy moly. You can watch a video and watch how to do it. So it's pretty incredible.
Yeah, it's awesome. It's amazing how some of the simple technology has come about, because that stuff's not complicated, right? And it works so well. Absolutely.
No, but you can do one crop of lettuce in 4 beds in a cat tunnel, and it pays for the cat tunnel.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a no-brainer.
Yeah. We have one high tunnel at the farm now, and we have like 6 beds in there. And I think we got like, I don't even want to say, but like a good chunk of our production has been out of those 6 beds, and like the whole field it's crazy. Anyways, so let's switch gears a little bit here. So talk a little about the pigs, and is the pig operation and all the other stuff, is that completely separate, or do you use the pigs at all to prep land or clear stuff, or is there any integration there? I know you said before like pigs are the opposite of no-till, but what's the balance there, or is there?
They are the tillers.
Yeah.
In the beginning, we did use pigs and chickens to build we have basically about a 3/4 acre terraced area, and it consists of tree crops that are on gentle swale systems with pocket ponds fill into each other, kind of zigzag down the hillside, terrace beds in the middle, in between those. And before we built those terrace beds, we used pigs and chickens to build up the fertility in between the tree crops. That's a type of system called alley cropping. It's a real small scale system. It's been super productive. However, we have really thick hedgerows of apples and hazelnuts and elderberries. And guess what likes to live in there? Cucumber beetles, rabbits, all kinds of predators. So there's like a fine line in between this thinking of having these hedgerows, which I'm, if it's cover hedgerows that you're going to let just go to seed and let the bugs and the little critters munch on it, that's fine, and then you're going to get rid of it. But if you do really thick hedgerows like what we did, there is some definitely competition, and you have to remember all the weeds going to seed are going to seed in there, and they're blending into your crops. So if I had to do it over again as an agriculturalist, I would probably not do it the same way. That's for sure. I'm not for sure what I would do differently, but I am glad that I have those hedgerows. Do they make that much of a difference? They do, in a way, as far as protecting the crops from winds, but they also cause problems as far as bugs and predation. They always have a place to go, and also weed pressure. So we can't let them just kind of grow and be without having to really work them. And we just usually don't have a whole lot of time to work them. The intensive garden systems keep our days pretty busy.
Can you explain what those, like, what they look like and where the placements are near the beds? Like how wide, how tall, like, are they wrapped around all of your annual beds? What's that setup look like?
Not all of them. We had our first area that we opened up is on a south-facing slope. It's a gentle slope that goes down. I'd say it's about 3/4 of an acre site. The tree crops that are in there now are kind of like peaches, plums, grafted apples, elderberries, comfrey, Jerusalem artichoke, hazelnuts, kind of real dense hedges. And they're probably, I would say they're probably 15 feet height at the most.
Okay, wow.
And they're 50 feet wide from one to the other, around 50 feet wide. And then you have 50 feet of raised beds in between. That's working fine. It's just a lot more management.
Yeah.
And a lot more management on a highly intensive, small-scaled farm is a lot more time that you don't have. So those are kind of some of the things that I'm seeing as problems as far as the system's concerned.
Well, it's a cool thing to hear about, because I put some in at Raleigh City Farm, and it's always the last thing we deal with. It's like, oh, well, should go work on that? No, we got crops we got to deal with. Like, that's, you don't want to be working on that when you have beds to flip or things to harvest. So yeah, I completely get it. But I think there needs to be more research, trialing, and sharing of like different species and different combos, and because I think there can be good benefits to it. I don't know. I don't have the time to figure it out, honestly.
Oh, I definitely think there's benefits to it. I mean, we're trying to create ecosystems,
right?
But unfortunately, we humans don't really understand ecosystems as well as we think we do. And so it's kind of trial and error, soil ecosystems, that's pretty simple, give it biology, give it sunlight, keep plants growing all the time on the beds, always keep photosynthesizing, that kind of thing. That's relatively simple. But as far as above ground ecosystems, I've never even seen an intact ecosystem. So, there's not very many left in the United States that I know of. I sure the heck don't know of many at all. Because ecosystems are constantly changing. And that's the thing that you have to understand. The disturbance is the normal management of ecosystems. They get disturbed, they create niches, they open up new possibilities, the sunlight gets into those areas, weeds grow, weeds produce berries and crops that little birds and all kinds of other things like, and then they poop and pee, and then they create the environment for the next round of the ecosystem to flourish. I mean, we don't really truly understand that completely. We understand that theoretically, and we hear people that say that they understand it, but I think we might have an inkling of understanding, but I sure the hell don't understand all of that, you know? So it's, yeah, it's, and then you get management, you know, you got to manage, you know, and it's sometimes it's a lot just to not manage than it is to manage. And like you said, when you have beds to flip and you have money to make and you have customers to satisfy, you know, those hedgerows go last,
Yeah.
you know?
Well, I think it's a healthy perspective. I think we always try to think we have the answer, and it's like, well, we have no clue what's going on. We have very little clue.
We really don't.
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
sorry.
No, it's
No,
fine.
I mean, that's a little bit of the beauty of market gardening at this scale, is because you can have you can have almost a little bit of control, you know, but whenever you're really looking at ecosystems, control kind of goes out the door. And production is up and down in ecosystems, you know. Your
Right.
production might be more for the monarchs that year than it's apples. You know, you just don't know who's getting the benefit ecosystem that particular year. Whereas these really controlled market garden systems, you can control those pretty well, actually. And that's I think is the beauty of the small scale market garden systems that are out there. And I think that's what makes it such a great revolution. Almost anybody can buy in, you know. And you know, it takes some time and it takes some hard hits, but over time you really start to create systems that really work for you, and also make you really good money. I mean,
Yeah.
it's not, I mean, you know, that's coming from someone who's never made a whole lot of money. Um, but it's pretty surprising how much market gardens can make whenever you're really dedicated to the product, the quality, and and making your customers happy.
Absolutely, I agreed completely. And I've been, you know, with my interns, I'm always talking about how much money certain things are worth, and they're like, "Wait, seriously?" I'm like, "Yeah, this is no joke. Like, you can make a decent living on very small acreage with these systems for sure." Cliff, I remember one thing you talked about was this sort of intersection of permaculture and no-till and market gardening, and how, you know, you were living more in the permaculture world, like building things on contour, and then you were like, wait, we need like straight things so we can have row cover and drip tape. And can you talk a little bit about that sort of thought process? I thought that was really, I never heard someone explain that before.
Sure. The first gardens that we built, that 3/4 acre terraced gardens with swales and all the permaculture frills, you know, I'd have 3 beds that were 70 feet long, 2 beds that were 50 feet long, 5 beds that were 40 feet long. Um, and then you're like trying to get all the drip tape and all that stuff figured out. And then you really expensive remake for all those beds. And then you put all that away in the springtime. And then you're like pulling it out the next year and you're trying to figure out what the hell's next. This piece is only 40 feet. It's a 70-foot bed. And then you got to put it back. And it's totally inefficient. I mean, just completely inefficient. So that's why we put all the flowers down there. So now we know, and we've come up with a little bit more efficient systems. But that's why we put the there, because it made so much more sense as far as efficiency was concerned. Whereas a lot of, like, you know, mandala gardens and keyhole gardens, you know, they say that you get more production, but nobody talks about the management, the weed eating, that's a lot of edges, you know, and you're really working against yourself when it comes to trying to maintain that stuff, man. It's like, I mean, it looks pretty. It looks really pretty from a drone footage, and it works really well. I mean, there's no doubt that it has some effect, but when it boils down to it, I was like 50-foot beds, 4 beds per block, you know, just very basic kind of systems.
Yeah, standardize
just systems
everything.
thinking at a different level. and more efficiency level as opposed to a natural systems level. I
Right.
guess that would be it.
I think a lot of us
Yeah,
even
probably crazy.
yeah, and Cliff. I think a lot of the market gardeners out there, including myself, like we've learned about permaculture. We haven't maybe used it in ways that a lot of permacultures have, but we're influenced by it for sure. And I think that's that point between like natural systems and then like, man, we got to grow some food here. Like we gotta standardize things. We gotta like have systems in place.
Yeah. And
I'm sure
that's the
that
beauty of the market garden system that's been, kind of been, I don't know, well, since Elliot Coleman, really. I mean, he
right.
kind of really helped bring it to the light who we were studying 20 years ago. And then, people nowadays Neversink and Ray Tyler and Jean Martin and all those people there, and Curtis Stone, they're all really, I think they're really making it approachable. Whereas
Yeah.
permaculture was not approachable. It was like this kind of esoteric language, and it had so many things you had to learn. You had to learn natural building, you had to learn rainwater catchment, you had to learn this thing, and you had to learn that thing, and you had to learn how to get along with other people, and it's just a lot to ask for. Where if you want to start a backyard market garden and you have like a suburban plot, you can actually make $20,000 a year just on a little bitty old garden. Sometimes better than a school bus salary. So efficiency has a lot to do with it. I think with permaculture is that they never talked about profit. The only time they ever talked about making money was whenever they were teaching courses about teachers and teaching more teachers and teaching more teachers. And it kind of was like, oh, wait, is this a marketing or trying to figure this out? Because you haven't talked too much other than Richard Perkins and Mark Shepard in a way and a couple others. But I've never really found anybody who's like created systems that are permaculture oriented, but actually profitable driven. And other than like large scale Joel Saladin and Gabe Brown and all those guys, but that's just different systems thinking altogether. So, yeah, it's been a long, strange trip.
Yeah, it sounds like it. Hey, so I kind of figured this would happen. We're like 40 minutes in. I got to get some questions here from the chat because I figured we could probably just talk about all this stuff for a long time. Hopefully
That was 40 minutes. Wow.
Yeah, see? Yeah, exactly, Cliff. Let's get I didn't really even get you going yet.
No, you didn't.
All right, so let's get to some questions here. The first question I could find in here from the Pharmacy Seeds Network says, are you still doing any inoculants, or are you doing any inoculants in the compost or the soil?
So the compost that we get is a thermophilic compost. We're pretty blessed, actually. Just north of us, the city of Franklin actually does a composting system, and they do thermophilic composting, and so it's like 40-to-1 carbon. We don't inoculate that when it comes in. We do, however, we do add biologicals after we bring in the compost. I think our biggest change in the future is going to be going more to a Korean natural farming system, exploring more of the systems. And I think that the other thing is also it's not really an inoculant, but it's kind of a plant inoculant, which is foliar feeding. That's really important. We do that weekly on a regular schedule. We have one of those backpack blower fogger things. The best investment I've ever made, one of them. And we just go through the whole farm. It takes about 30 minutes. We do biologicals, and we also do a little bit of fertilizer, and if needed, we do pesticides. But usually we'd rather keep away from those. But I see the future being more of the Korean natural farming systems and inoculants and microbiology. That's really the way to go. And for 10 years or so, 11 years, every year we have a buddy that lives near us, and he makes actively aerated compost teas, and we have him come out and spray our entire farm.
Is that Troy?
Not just the bed, the entire farm. We use like a fire hose rig, and we spray the entire farm. So we've been doing that pretty much every year for about 10 years, I think.
Is that Troy?
So yes, we do a little bit of both.
Okay, is that Troy Hinkey?
Troy's been out here a lot.
Okay.
And he's actually helped us a lot with our compost teaching classes. But one of his students next to us and friends, Joey Thomas, he's the one that comes over and sprays for us.
Cool. Yeah, Troy's been on the show here. He's an awesome dude.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, he knows. Oh man, it's amazing talking to him about that stuff. Cool. Here's another question for you. Any good permaculture books that you recommend? After a whole discussion about permaculture, do you have any books if people want to learn about it?
Introduction based, I think the Gaia's Garden, especially for small scale, suburbanites and urbanites, and maybe even smaller scale rural systems. I've always really enjoyed the larger scale systems. I've always really enjoyed Darren Doherty's work. It's more broad scale regenerative agriculture design. You can find him at regrarians.com, and other books on permaculture that I like. I mean, some of Bill Mullis are great. There's no doubt about it. They're a little bit intimidating, but most of all of his books can give you an introduction to, except the big book, the Designer's Manual, will give you a great introduction to permaculture in general.
Okay, cool. Let's see here. Could you talk about your experience with no-till in your market garden? I think we talked a little bit about that, but have you considered trialing continuous cropping to mitigate the problems you have with rainfall?
I don't personally have the labor to do a lot of continuous cropping, but I do it. Like right now we have okra and onions in the ground. The onions are coming out. We're saving the okra seeds for winter flowers as they dry. And then under that okra, we're planting lettuce. So those are succession crops that we've tried. Sometimes if crops will mess up, we'll just keep planting and planting and planting in systems. Like say you get 40% germination on something like spinach, very common actually. We'll just continuously, we won't just let the bed lay fallow.
Will you come in with the same crop or something different?
Just something, whatever we have in the nursery, usually, whatever makes the most sense at that time. We've been doing a lot of onions and lettuces, and we did actually garlic and spinach. That was awesome. And that was a total mistake. We planted a bunch of spinach. It didn't come up, and then we planted with it, and we planted our garlic in it in the fall. And then all the spinach came up. It was the best spinach I've ever grown. And then we looked at it, and we're like, oh, people usually do that as a intercrop. So now we do that. I'm trying to think of some other ones we've trialed. Sometimes it was like seed radishes in between rows of lettuces and stuff like that. Something that's really quick. It's usually intercropping for us is usually on the fly. It's kind of like, oh, we need to put something in there. There's a lot of space there. Why don't we do this? We don't have any more beds. Let's put some, radish in between those lettuces or something like that.
I'm kind of that way too. I started playing with it a little bit more this year as I'm more comfortable. I mean, this is only my third season growing, so for me, I'm like still trying to figure out a lot of crops. But yeah, we'll have a half a tray of lettuce left over from a bed and be like, oh, there's a little bit of space over there. There's something died. Like, let's just put that in there.
That's what we do.
Yeah, I'm the same way with it for sure. I know like Jesse's like super nerd about interplanting, and he makes fun of me for planting like whole beds of green onion. He's like, "What, dude? You just interplant that stuff everywhere. You don't need a whole bed of that." That's what he always.
That's probably true.
Yeah, it's true. I haven't.
Because in between green onions, you get a lot of weeds.
Yeah. So yeah, that's cool, man. Thank you for that. I'm trying to look at the questions here. I was just. Not a ton of questions here, a lot of comments. If you guys have some questions, make sure you get them in. Also, hit the like button if you guys are watching this. That would be very cool. Um, yeah, so Sterling here, and Sterling's been in here several weeks asking some great questions. Any takeaways on Korean natural farming experimentations for beginner market gardeners? Have you guys just started working with that, or you're looking into it, or where are you on the path with KNF?
I've been in and out of it actually. I first started doing inoculants and indigenous microorganism collection probably 15 years ago actually.
Okay.
So I've been kind of in and out of it, and then we all got hooked on the soil food web and soil food web biology and Elaine Ingham and all that, and then we kind of went that route for a long time, and now we're doing some of the Jadam systems. I haven't done a whole lot of KNF honestly lately, but I've done a lot of bokashi in the past, and didn't have great results with bokashi in my farming systems, but as a composting system, it worked great. And I think that was just neglect of not knowing what I was doing.
Mm-hmm.
The bokashi smells really good. It smells like fermented sourdough bread or bread starter. And I put that in certain areas of my garden, and every animal came and ate it all, just dug everything up. So I think that was partly just not knowing what I was doing. But I'm kind of I'm leaning towards doing more and more Korean natural farming. I just haven't gotten that into my daily routine. It's all about getting your daily routines going, and I just haven't gotten all that in yet.
Yeah. So you guys have, I know you're really sort of dialing down on dialing in a lot of your systems there, and you guys just built like a huge wash station too, and like how's that whole process going for you guys?
You have a 16 by 40 shed, and it has 2 walk-in coolers in it that are let's see, 8 by 12 each.
Wow.
We just finished the electric up on that. We should have those coolers up and running. We got most of it. We got half of it paid for, or part of it paid for, by a TAEP grant, which is Tennessee Agriculture Enhancement Program, which is based on the tobacco industry and all that stuff. All that money went into it's. I think it's the same thing in North Carolina. You have tobacco money that went into grant systems that you can get for small farmers. Maybe that's Appalachia Grown, or I don't remember what it is, but we have those kinds of things. It's going good. We still haven't finished. Still doing, we're still doing our systems kind of in a makeshift area, and it works great. Sometimes things that work just keep working, and and you just kind of keep doing them until you move into the next phase. So I got to finish a little bit more plumbing. We built ourselves, which was pretty good. The problem right now with building, I don't know if you all know this, but 2x4s are $7 a piece, and sheets of plywood are 30 something dollars. It's not a really good time to be building a lot of stuff financially. It's really, really expensive. And that kind of hit us pretty hard. We weren't ready for that. So, we got it paid for. We're good, but we're still trying to get up and running as far as the infrastructure is concerned.
Cool.
I'd like to say that it could just get slammed together and get built, but we're building it ourselves, and that just doesn't happen. And now, we're a month ahead on winter. We're never this chilly in September, and now we're literally a month ahead as far as winter is concerned. So now we're having to do all kinds of other things like chop firewood and get everything ready for the winter, and build more pig huts so that they're all safe and happy. And so the processing shed, which is really like about 85%, 90% finished, just has to be put on hold. And that's just how it is on farm. where you're building most of the infrastructure yourself.
Yeah, I have not gone to buy lumber lately, but I have heard that, and that is just crazy. And I feel like yeah, that like when temporary stuff becomes permanent, you're like, hey, it's just working, so we'll just roll with it. I feel like that
Yeah,
happens way more often
yeah,
than we like to admit.
it does. That's the
um,
reality of it.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. Let's see here. So there's a question here. I know we're talking about like no till and stuff, but here someone had a question about pigs. Um, yeah, tell us about your journey with pigs and breeds and stuff like that. Maybe just be brief
um,
about it. I'm sure that's a long
sure.
discussion, but
Remember, I bought a clear cut piece of land. It looked like the Sahara Desert when we bought it. It was the worst thing you've ever seen. Um, and it started growing back really fast. And we were like, that was 12 years ago. I was 36, 35 years old. I'm 48 now. And so back then I was like sharp machetes. We just go out and tackle it and we'll keep it at bay while we're planting all our tree crops and all these ideas. And then I realized, man, I'm not going to keep up with this. There's no way. So I thought, I had a buddy down the road and he's like, well, come and get some pigs. And so I went and got some pigs and I bought some red wattle mule foot crosses and I bought one boar and two females. I had no idea what I was getting into. And basically over time, I've learned a lot about pigs and about pig farming and watering and death and livestock and dead stock. And that kind of started my journey with pigs. And now I'm kind of I'm an old line breeder of these old genetics that I'm being mentored to take over. These old line Durocs that have been grown in Tennessee since 1914. And I kind of fell into that. And it just enhances my love affair with that book that I mentioned, J. Russell Smith's book called Tree Crops, A Permanent Agriculture. Believe it or not, that was wrote in 1920. And it talks all about tree crops and tree crop cultures, but the majority of those cultures also had pigs. And like the Dehesa system in Spain and the Montado system in Portugal and all those types of systems. So, and even the Appalachians, really. So then of my roundabout in pigs, yeah, that's my quick version.
okay, because I feel like that would be a long story otherwise.
It's my favorite story, but it's a really long story.
Okay, cool. Let's see here. Hey, let's see. Oh, Casey's in here. How you doing, man? Cool. Oh, I also want to ask you about your okra, Cliff. Can you talk about that? What do you have going on with your okra stuff?
Yeah, so I've been growing okra for years. I love okra. Last year I grew okra in one bed or two beds, two 70-foot beds or something, and I was like, man, that's a lot of space on the sides left over on these shoulders. So we did this year we did onions on the sides of the bed okra. And I even thought about actually peas this fall, like putting a webbing on the stalks and then doing peas within it, but we didn't end up doing that. But that's still a good idea. But yeah, so we just flipped the bed real fast, put compost on it, planted the okra in, transplanted it in, and then planted in there too. And it was one of those things where we had like a bunch of onions. And I'm like, well, let's put some onions on the side, and it worked really good. It was kind of haphazard. I don't know if any farmers are like that, but it's just you kind of got to see what's available and figure out what you can do and fill the spaces accordingly. And it worked out really great. And the other thing that we do is we trim up the leaves, and then we try to always hit it with sticks. And that's an old time Southern thing that the old timers did called whooping it. And they would pick it, they would rip off the leaves, and then they would hit it with sticks, and then supposedly it got better production. I think I need a tutorial probably in that as far as better production is concerned, but what we learned is don't rip off too many leaves. You'll get better production not ripping off too many, and you don't really need to whip it because you just don't really have the time.
Wait, what's the point of whooping it? Why? What's the rationale behind that?
Well, it puts stress on the plant.
Okay.
And then that stress will go to it wanting to produce seed and flower, flower and then seed. That's the idea.
Okay.
I mean, I've heard of this a lot of industries.
This sounds like a great Instagram post. That's all this probably is.
Yeah, whooping my okra.
Or at least
it must have been a good one. I don't know. Whatever.
Good title for a YouTube video.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm gonna think more about interplanting with okra next year because I feel like at first they're really slow and then all of a sudden they just go like crazy. So like, there's plenty of time in there. You can get another crop in there. I'm definitely gonna have to do that next year.
Yeah, well, and it's a good crop if you can. You know, a lot of people look for okra. It's kind of like tomatoes. Every tomatoes as early as they can, and then you're producing tomatoes, and then they're like, man, I'm sick of tomatoes. And I'm like, well, I still got a lot of tomatoes. And then it's the same with okra. You know, you do okra and everybody's like, oh, okra. And then you're still producing okra. We're still producing okra now.
We are too.
And everybody's like, yeah, I'm not buying any more okra. Nobody's buying okra anymore. It's like at markets, it's like whatever next, you know? So you have to have consistency in your lettuces and all those other things so that you just keep those daily people coming, and then you surprise them with some okra or you surprise them with some early peas. But they won't buy peas again if you could grow them all year. It's just a really strange thing with marketing and growing food and things that are seasonal, you know? That's just what I've learned.
You just got to be there 2 weeks before everybody else. I guess that's the key, right? With the
that's the key.
Yeah.
Tomatoes. If you can have tomatoes early, peppers early, just get them in early and then rip them out.
Yeah.
Because you're going to be working your tail off to keep them going. You know, it makes more sense to do it that way and charge a lot more for it.
More tunnels too, right? No, back to that.
Way more tunnels.
Yeah,
all tunnels.
I always say cover the whole farm with plastic. You know, let's just do it.
I'm with you. I can't believe I say that, but it's true.
It makes
all the way.
Yeah, the production is it's huge. And on that topic too, I don't know if you know David Williams from Sunset Market Gardens, but he has a ton of tunnels, and yeah, he doesn't like go to the market in the summer because all the values go down on all like the summer crops. So he just comes to market early with tomatoes and stuff like that when no one else has them. So it's out there.
That's something we noticed this year. We're like, man, everybody bought okra whenever it was. We were the first ones to have it, but then nobody bought okra after that. So we just throw it in everybody's CSA bag, you know. And it's the same with tomatoes. Everybody loves tomatoes, you know, early in the season, but we're still producing tomatoes, you know. And you're working your tail off to keep those things going and lower and leaning and all, you know, professional stuff. And you're realizing that not as many people are buying tomatoes. That guy's a brilliant then, if that's what he figured out, because he's right. I've noticed the same exact thing.
Well, he was just frustrated because I did a bunch of videos with David. He's an amazing farmer. He just noticed he would go to market and everyone had the same crops and everyone started charging less because no one was selling them. And he's like, I can't make money at those levels. So he's like, I'm going to take a few months off in the summer essentially and work on winter stuff, you know, but in the summer. And so it's been working.
Yeah, North Carolina, right?
Yeah.
So he lives in North Carolina.
Yeah. He's just
that makes a lot of sense to me. Yeah, July and August, take them off.
I also think we need to. Yeah, dude, no joke. Although this year was not as bad. This year was not as bad as last year. Last year was so much hotter.
No, it wasn't. But we still got burnt out, you know.
Oh yeah, it gets to you. And I would agree with you with the weather here. I mean, it's been cool the last month. I'm like waiting for the heat to come back. It has not come back yet.
Yeah, I wasn't ready for that. Not at all.
What zone are you in?
Lettuces and greens are going great.
Yeah. I noticed it cooled off like 3-4 weeks ago, and everything just like started growing like crazy. It was like,
yep.
Yeah.
I'm here.
Cool. Well, guys, we've been at this like an hour or so. I mean, Cliff and I can probably talk until whenever, but if you guys got a couple more questions, that would be great if you get them in. Otherwise, let's see here. So I was like, I'm start chatting and then I forget that I'm like looking at all the questions here. I gotta do everything at the same time. Oh, question here is, what are some of your favorite crops to grow? And I don't know if that question is like what makes you the most money, or you like to eat, or however you want to answer that is probably fine.
Yeah, I would say definitely lettuce. I really like growing lettuce, mostly because I just love eating it. Our family loves fresh greens, and I would say those two, and then and baby greens. They're the most challenging for me. Um, and I don't know. Unfortunately, I think tomatoes are kind of up there, but I think that was like an ego thing. Like I give myself to be like some tomato farmer. I got to figure this one out. And then we did it, and we're like, man, that was a lot of work. So, but I really love tomatoes too. This year, I really enjoyed growing shishito peppers. Those things are delicious. We eat them almost every day, and they produce like mad under the hoop houses. Um, the other side of that, the things I don't anything that you have to trellis, and I have to take the trellis down. Anything that requires too much work ripping it out, you know, like arugula and stuff, we don't rip it out anymore. We just put compost on it, water it, put down landscape cloth, wait a week, forget about it.
Yeah, we started doing that. I'm not touching it anymore. That's just
Holy moly, that's the best system I've ever seen.
it works so well, man.
Builds biology and builds biology and builds biology.
It looks so, and when you pull that back after a week in the heat, you pull that back and the soil looks amazing. Like it looks so good.
Yeah, that's true. Last year, now I have to say that one of my favorite crops to grow and was broccoli and cauliflower, because I finally did it. It was like, wow, that's a beautiful head of broccoli. Wow, I blanched that cauliflower really nicely, but I never grew them again. They just they don't make as much money.
Yeah, I
know. They're just too long in the bed, and then of course there's just greens. I think just greens in general is greens. That's my favorite.
I'm the same way too.
That's just what we eat. That's what we love. It's what we're getting pretty good at. Once you're good at something, you want to stick with it, and so that's been really nice.
Yeah,
that was I guess that was So basically, greens.
Okay, well, which makes sense. Pig and leaf, right? So that kind of makes sense, anyways, right?
Okay. Right. Oh, I also like dahlias.
Okay.
Dahlias are the most extraordinary flower I've ever seen. So it's like, yeah, I better not say that. I was gonna say it's like LSD in a bud. It's just look at the flower and you're like, wow, you don't need anything, man. You're just good. It's like beautiful. Wow.
So I want to ask you about your flowers for a minute. What's that been, your flower production? What's that been like with, your sales outlets? How's that changed this year?
Well, so Jennifer takes care of most of that, and our sales outlets are farmers markets, and she does like custom bouquet making at farmers markets. That's really, people love that. Ever since she started doing that, we've been selling out left and right. Cool. Where she would stay up until 2 a.m. preparing bouquets, and then we get up at 5, go to the market, and we sold them, but they didn't sell nearly as well, I don't think. And then also with flowers, we sell to, I think, 3 florists in town.
Okay.
Kind of batches of florists. And then, and that's about it, really. Okay. We don't do any weddings. We don't do private events. We don't do any of that stuff.
Okay. Question here from Tony says, when's the how-to farm book coming out? And has Cliff ever planted anything other than grasses in his pig silvopasture system?
I'm not a writer. You're not probably ever going to see a book from me. And
did you promise someone a book, Cliff? Like, did you already talk about that?
People keep asking me about it, but I'm not. I don't know. That's like 50th time I've had that question asked.
So if enough people say it just becomes a rumor, and then you're gonna have to write the book, Cliff. Is that
rumor creates better publicity. But as far as in the pig pastures, I've experimented with definitely with grasses, but also mostly annuals. Um, they just tear the daylights out of a lot of the perennial grasses. But I've used sorghum Sudan grass. I've used that's really successful in the summer. And then in the winter, I use a rye and vetch and pea mixture, and then that'll come up in the spring, and then I'll put the hogs on it, or pretty much right before it goes to seed, and then usually the same in the summer. But usually, if I rest a paddock for long enough, it'll come up with its own grasses and weeds. So most of the grasses that I use are fescue. And then you always want to have like some sort of legume with that. So maybe a red clover. Let's see, brome grass. What else have I grown? I've done Kentucky bluegrass. I've done Bermuda grass, which Bermuda seems to be the better grass for pigs because it comes back so crazy. Whereas a lot of the other grasses, they'll just root them up. But I think the biggest one is those grass fescues and stuff like that.
Okay.
And
Cool.
ryegrass.
Okay. Yeah, so maybe this will be the last question or two here. Can you expand a little bit more on dahlias and, what sort of flowers are you guys growing that you're going into those custom bouquets?
Well, money makers, let's just go there first. The money makers are dahlias typically, but dahlias are really, really frustrating. They're pretty hard to grow. It's not that they're hard to grow. There's a love-hate relationship that you have with them as a grower. They get a lot of bugs. You have, like right now, we have bags over all the blooms, which seems to be ridiculous, but they make up for it in their what they make as far as cash is concerned. Anemones, Lysianthus, all the cool flowers make a really good amount of money. Flowers, even though we had a horrible season for sunflowers, they make pretty good money, usually about $1 a stem. And let's see, Lysianthus. We planted a bunch of peonies. So we're looking, just to give you an idea, we're looking at paying attention to high dollar annuals, Lysianthus, anemone, dahlias, and several others. But the majority of all, if we want to put in woody perennials, just because they're that much easier. So we're planting peonies and baptisia and hydrangea and all that kind of stuff as perennials. So they come back every year. We don't have to freaking do all the flipping and all. Flipping a flower bed is way different than flipping a lettuce bed. Let's put it that, because they have roots galore and they have a lot of stalks and there's no real easy way out. But as far as, I think the original question was dahlias, for me, the dahlia is just the most beautiful flower I've ever laid my eyes on. And they're also a pretty good moneymaker in the fall. Like right now, they're doing their best. So everything else is out, we're actually flipping beds and putting in cool flowers now. So basically, that's just things that will overwinter. And then in February and March and April, they'll start to flower. And then we'll get those harvests then. And then there's the summer crop rounds and then the fall round, which is the dahlias and coxcomb and Gumphrena and some other things that we're growing right now.
Awesome. Cool, Cliff. I don't want to keep you too late. I know we all got stuff to do tomorrow. So I really, really appreciate you hanging out tonight and, sharing your knowledge and life experiences with everybody. It's always nice to talk to you. So thanks so much for hanging out tonight. And hopefully we'll do this again at some other time.
Thank you very much. And thanks everybody for not watching the debate and coming over here and watching this. So I appreciate it. We'll see how the other side goes.
All right. Thanks, Cliff.
See y'all.
All right, guys. Well, thanks so much for hanging out tonight. I know there's other things taking everyone's attention, but Yeah, just great talk with Cliff. He's just an unbelievable person and an unbelievable farmer, and always got good stories too. And I hope to make it out there and visit him sometime soon. So, anyways, that's what we have for you guys tonight. We'll be back in 2 weeks with JM Fortier. Really excited about that, and we'll see you guys later. Thanks for coming tonight. Make sure you hit the like button.